Hello everyone. Today I'm gonna dig into the history. As we all know, India has a big historical background. In this video, I'll be talking the very basic and start, that is the company rule. And also, whatever I'll be talking in one or the other way forms the roots of the Indian constitution. That is, one or the other way, it links to the constitutional framework of India. In 1600, the British came to India as traders in the form of East India Company. So they were granted a charter by Queen Elizabeth I, which gave them exclusive right of trading in India. Granting a charter, in the sense, a charter is a written grant which is given by the legislative or the sovereign power of the country. So, Queen Elizabeth I granted them a charter which gave them exclusive trading rights, you can say, in India. So in 1765, the company was trading purely, like its trading functions were pure. There was no cheating, or there was no, like, they weren't showing any authority over anything or anyone. But it was still 1765. After that, you can say it's obtained the Diwani system. Diwani, in the sense, claiming rights over revenue and civil justice, so of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. Then in 1858, I guess everyone will be aware of Sepoy Mutiny, also called as the Indian Mutiny, or Mutiny refers to a rebellion, you can say. It is actually also called as the wake of the First War of Independence. So, this first war of independence was widespread but unsuccessful rebellion against British rule in India in 1857 to 1859. Begun in Meerut by Indian troops, which is also called sepoys, it spread to Delhi, Agra, Kanpur, and Lucknow. So this rule continued until India was granted independence on August 15, 1947. So, with independence, there came the need of the constitution. After independence, every country faces problems about who is gonna rule, how they're gonna rule, and all these things all these problems, you can say, falls on the shoulders of the country. And so, hence, a constituent assembly was formed for this purpose in 1946, and on Jan 26, 1950, the constitution came into being. So, in British India, a lot of things happened, a lot of events took place, you can say, and they led the foundation of the Indian Constitution. That is, you can say, they formed the roots of the Indian Constitution. And so, they are explained. So, I'm going to explain them in a chronological order under two major headings. The first is the company rule, and the second is the crown rule. I'll be covering the company rule in this video. So the acts that come under this: Regulating Act of 1773, Amending Act of 1781, Pitt's India Act of 1784, Act of 1786, Charter Act of 1793, Charter Act of 1813, Charter Act of 1833, and Charter Act of 1853. Starting with the first, Regulating Act of 1773. So it is considered of the great constitutional importance. So the reason behind this is, first, this was the first step which was taken by the British government to control and regulate the affairs of the East India Company in India. That is, whatever happens in India, the actions of the East India Company, like the controlling and the governance, will be controlled by the British government. Second was, for the first time, the political and administrative functions of the company were recognized. Like, company came here for the trading purpose, but now it had other responsibilities even. Third is, it laid the foundations of the central administration in India. Central administration, as in it is the leading, you can say, or the group of people or the highest administration department who oversee all the lower departments. So, in short, it kind of laid the foundations of the central administration in India. The features of this act are as follows. So, first one, there are in all 5 features. So, I'll mention it by giving numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, the first one, it appointed the governor of Bengal as the governor general of Bengal and created an executive council which consisted of 4 members. So, this executive council had 4 members which will actually to assist in the sense to help him or to guide him or do any work of him. And the first such governor general was Lord Warren Hastings. Second, so the Bengal, Bombay and Madras presidencies, they were independent from one another, but because of this act, Bombay and Madras presidencies were now subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. That is, it were brought under the Governor General of Bengal. Third one, it provided the establishment of Supreme Court in Calcutta in 1774, which had 1 Chief Justice and 3 other judges. Fourth, it actually prohibited, you can say, or restricted the servants of the company from engaging in any false activities like engaging in any private trade or accepting presents or rewards or bribes from the natives. This was not allowed. Fifth one, it strengthened the control of the British government over the company. So how it was, because the governing body of the company, has to report all the things to the British government, like the revenue, civil and military affairs in India. This all were supposed to be reported by the company to the British government there. Second, Amending Act of 1781. This is also known as the Act of Settlement. This act was passed to correct the faults of the Regulating Act of 1773. That is the first one which I mentioned. So the features of this act are as follows. So it actually excluded, I can say, or excused the Governor General and the Council from the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court for the acts done by them in their official capacity, and also it excused the servants of the Britishers or of the company, you can say, from the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court for their official actions. In short, it means that Britishers were not allowing, but they were kind of expanding their rule, kind of trying to rule independently, I can say, as their actions of their Governor General and their servants were not considered under the jurisdiction of Supreme Court. So they were kind of allowed to do anything and wherever they want. Second, it also excused again the revenue matters and the collection of revenue from the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Third one, so the Supreme Court was to have jurisdiction over all the inhabitants or the people who lived in Calcutta. It was also required that the court has to administer the personal law of the defendants, or you can say the accused person. The court has to consider the personal law of the accused person. For example, Hindus were to be tried according to Hindu law and Muslims were to be tried according to the Mohammedan law. Fourth one, it laid down that the appeals from the provincial courts could be taken to the Governor General in Council and not to the Supreme Court. Fifth one, it gave authority, or you can say power, to the Governor General in Council to frame regulations or kind of control for the provincial courts and councils. The next important act was the Pitt's India Act of 1784. So the features of this act were as follows. So for the first one is it kind of differentiated or distinguished between the commercial and the political affairs or functions, you can say, of the company. Second, it is there was the establishment of a system called the double government. So what is this double government? It allowed the court of directors, you can say, to manage all the commercial affairs, but it created a new body called the Board of Control to manage all the political affairs. So the commercial affairs were controlled, you can say, or managed by the court of directors, and the political affairs were managed by a new body which is called as the Board of Control, and hence this is nothing but a double government. Third one, it gave authority to the Board of Control to supervise and direct all the operations of the civil and military government or the revenues of the British possessions in India. It means whatever the British owned in India, like all the operations of the civil and military government or the revenue, you can say, it was all supervised by the Board of Control. So this act is considered significant because of two reasons. First one, the company's territories in India were for the first time called the British possessions in India. So the territories that came under the company were now owned by the British. Second, the British government was given the supreme control over the company's affairs and its administration in India. That is, company's all affairs and its administration in India was transferred under the direct control of British government. Fourth, Act of 1786. In 1786, Lord Cornwallis, he was appointed as the Governor General of Bengal. So he placed two conditions before accepting the post. The first was he should be given authority or power to override the decision of the council in special cases. Second was he would also be the commander-in-chief. So according to this, the Act of 1786 was enacted to make this both the provisions. Fifth, Charter Act of 1793. So the features of this act were: first, so in Act of 1786, Lord Cornwallis, he was given the power to override the decision of his council in special cases. So this decision was further extended to all the future governor generals and governors of the presidencies. Second, I talked previously about the subordinate presidencies, that is the Bombay and Madras. So it gave the Governor General more power and control over these subordinate presidencies of Bombay and Madras. Third, it extended the trade monopoly of the company in India for another period of 20 years. Fourth, it said that the Commander-in-Chief was not a member of the Governor-General's Council unless and until he was appointed. Fifth, it also said that the members of the Board of Control and their staff were to be paid out of the Indian revenues. Sixth, Charter Act of 1813. So the features were: first, it abolished the trade monopoly of the company in India. That is, the Indian trade was thrown open to all the British merchants, so anyone can come and trade in India. But the company still continued monopoly over trade in tea and trade with China. Second, it forcefully declared the authority of the British Crown over the company's territories in India. Remember, it was forcefully declared. Third, it allowed the Christian missionaries to come to India for the purpose of giving greater knowledge to the people. Fourth, it provided for the spread of Western education among the people who lived in the British territories in India. Fifth, it was said that the authorities, that the local governments in India were asked to impose taxes on people, like higher taxes, and if the people not paid the taxes, then they were punished for not paying the taxes. Seventh, Charter Act of 1833. So, this act was the final step towards the centralization in British India. The features: first one, it made the Governor General of Bengal as the Governor General of India and gave him all civil and military powers. So thus the act created for the first time Government of India having authority over the entire territorial area owned by the British in India. So the first Governor General of India was Lord William Bentinck. Second, it deprived the Governor of Bombay and Madras of their legislative powers. That means Governor of Bombay and Madras they lacked legislative powers, whereas the Governor General of India was given exclusive legislative powers for the entire British India. The laws which were made under the previous acts they were called as regulations, whereas the laws which made under this act were called as acts. Third, it ended the activities of East India Company as a commercial body. That means now this body was completely became a, or purely it now became a administrative body. As East India Company came to trade in India, it was called as the commercial body, but now it became a purely administrative body. It provided that the company's territories in India were held by the Majesty. Fourth one, the Charter Act of 1833. It kind of introduced open competition for the selection of the civil servants. So it said that the Indian should not be excluded from holding any place or office and employment under the company. But however, this provision was not accepted after the opposition from the Court of the Directors. That means, as the Court of Directors did not accept this provision, it was negated. Eighth, Charter Act of 1853. So, this was the last of the series of Charters Act, which was passed by the British Parliament between 1793 and 1853. So, it was considered of great importance. So the features of this act are: first one, it's separated. So it was done for the first time that the legislative and executive functions of the Governor General was separated. So it provided for the addition of 6 new members to the council, which were called as the legislative councillors. So, in other words, it established a separate Governor General's Legislative Council, which came to be known as the Indian Legislative Council. So, this legislative wing of the council functioned like a mini parliament, you can say, adopting the same procedures as the British Parliament. So, thus, the legislation for the first time was treated as a special function of the government requiring special machinery and special process. I guess it is clear. The only thing you have to remember in this is it separated legislative and executive functions. 6 new members were added to the legislative council. Those were called as legislative councillors. So, second now, it introduced an open competition system of selection and recruitment of the civil servant. Open competition, that means all were permitted to compete here. So, the undertaken civil service was thus thrown open to Indians also. As it was open competition, Indians were also allowed to compete. And thus, accordingly, Macaulay Committee was appointed in 1854. This committee was on the Indian civil service. Third, so it extended the company's rule and allowed it to retain the possession of Indian territories. So in the previous act, we saw that the company's rule was finished and British took control over it. But here, in this act, the company was allowed to extend its rule and its possession over the Indian territories on the trust for the British crown, I can say. But it did not specify any particular period, you can say, like it did in the previous charters. Therefore, there was not a clear indication, and that's why the company rule could be terminated any time by the parliament. Fourth one, It introduced for the first time local representation in Indian Legislative Council. Like, of the 6 new legislative members of the Governor General's Council, 4 were appointed by the local, that is provincial governments of Madras, Bombay, Bengal and Agra. So here I am done with the company rule, that is the period between 1773 to 1858. I have completed all the acts like the Regulating Act, then the Amending Act, then Pitt's India Act, then Act of 1786 and all the series of the Charter Act.